Greetings, fellow space travellers. Welcome to another episode of The Space Makers, your guide to slowing down, thinking deeply, and living a meaningful life. I'm Daniel C., your host, and we're guiding you through the art of recapturing your fractured attention one habit at a time to focus on what truly matters. A special thanks to our sponsor, Bulk Nutrients, who support your health, fitness and well-being, proudly making quality supplements more affordable right here in Tasmania. You can enjoy a 5% discount on protein powders and health supplements at bulknutrients.com.au. Just enter the coupon code SPACEMAKERS for a discount on orders over $45.
The Space Makers with Daniel C. and Matt Bain.
Hi everyone, welcome to The Space Makers, where we help you make space for a better life. My name's Daniel C. and I'm a productivity author and coach and speaker. And we are here in season 1 to talk about the fracturing of our attention and how to make space to improve your concentration. Basically how to focus in a world where we're all distracted. And I'm super excited because today we have a guest, Jack Riewoldt from the Richmond Footy Club. We're going to talk about footy, we're going to talk about life and what it means to be productive on and off the footy field. For those who don't know Jack, he is a former Richmond footy player in the AFL. He was a vice captain who led his team to 3 AFL premierships. He is a 3 times Coleman Medalist, a 3 times All-Australian, and he was the leading goal kicker in Richmond in his time there. 3 seems to be a number for him. He's got 3 young kids. He's also got 3 jobs. He works for the Authentic Leaders Group as a director, works for Tas Footy and for Fox Sport. He's got his own podcast, has written his own book. I could go on. And importantly, Jack is a Tasmanian like myself, although maybe even more Tasmanian because he was actually born here. I'm super excited to have Jack on the show to talk about focus and attention. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you for having me. Good to be on Space Makers.
Yeah, it's really good to have you here. And is that right? You've got 3 jobs now. You've got like Authentic Leaders Group.
Yeah, Authentic Leaders, which is a group that I founded with a couple of other friends from Victoria, as well as my wife Carly. I work for the 19th licence, the Tasmanian Football Club, in a ambassador / sort of culture position. What else do I do?
Fox Footy?
I've got to go. I work at Fox Footy covering football. So that
Don't tell me there's more than 3.
That gives me a little bit of a footy fix. I've got 3 kids, but I've just gone and started a small, not say a small, but a logistics management firm that does, it's like a broker for logistics. So there's people that are smarter than me, but one thing I'm good at is relationships, which I'm sure we'll talk about today because I've learned that over my journey, and that role fits in nicely with that. So certainly there's an element of juggling everything. Yeah, it's certainly a different lifestyle than the one that I've lived for the last 17 years.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a bit about footy. We're going to talk about, what it means to focus and build systems and productivity in the footy field, but we're going to talk about the transition and then a bit about, what are you learning in this new season of life, which would be great.
Yeah.
So I want to start. So, I've done some work with your business, Authentic Leaders Group, and we've done some stuff around strategy and productivity, but we've also done a lot of work around strengths. And so people might not have heard your strengths. So we've worked on what we call the Clifton Strengths, which is a Gallup organisation tool. And it's a way of understanding what you're good at and giving you a language individually and as a team to talk about what you're good at. So I'm going to put you on the spot and we're going to talk about your strengths.
Yeah.
So from my understanding, and I have asked permission that I can share these, of course, but your top 5 strengths came out as communication, activator, strategic, futuristic, and woo, which means winning others over. Do you want to tell us about 1 or 2 of those strengths, what they are and how you use them day by day?
Yeah, it's probably good to chat about how I sort of came across Clifton Strengths for the first time really ever. So in 2015, I sort of was at this really pivotal time in my football career where I'd been at Richmond for nearly 10 years. So I was drafted when I was 17. My wife, Carly, she works in L&D and she's got a master's in organisational leadership. So I'd always had that little side of my life at home. Carly suggested I do Gallup Strength just to start to know myself a little bit better. And at this point in my career, I was like at this crossroads where Richmond wasn't a very successful organisation to work in. I had been in a leadership position, had that taken away from me, and was sort of searching for a little bit where I sat in the group and in the club of the football club. So that's probably where it started for me, and now it's got to the point where like I know my top 5, and they do change with life circumstances and whatnot.
For those who don't know the Gallup tool, we're typically strong in about 10 of our strengths. There's 34 themes, and those 10 are used on a regular basis. So we're only going to talk about the first 5, but you might even have more than that. And then increasingly, they become a bit more like, your left hand versus your right hand, or your non-dominant strengths. But tell me about one of the strengths you love and how you use it.
Yeah, well, the reason I like Gallup is we talk about strengths rather than weaknesses. I mean, we're all programmed to fight or flight. Like, we're all programmed to think about what we're not great at, especially probably as men. But there's that, like, you look at even body image, like people always think, well, they always want something or they want to change something, but they never talk about what you're great at. And that was a real shift for me personally that then flowed into my workplace as well, that we started to talk about what we were bloody great at, because I got introduced to this 80-20 rule. It was just do things right 80% of the time, and you're going to stuff up 20% of the time. But if you get it right 80% of the time, you're going to be okay. So we spoke about that a lot at the Tigers. But so communicator, activator, strategic, futuristic, and woo. I'm always attracted to woo. I think it's something that I like to do. Like, I like to be friendly with people, have conversation, maybe get people to see things from a different perspective, and win others over certainly has that. So I love that one. I think that's probably my favourite if I was going to choose one out of the 5.
Yeah, and I've seen that in you. So like, winning others over is about, it's not about charisma necessarily, even though I think you are charismatic, but it's about having this ability to be interested in people and to just be a presence, and where you win people over because you're curious about them and you build relationships and you connect people, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's because it sort of sounds a little bit like it's a you're a lawyer in a court and you're trying to win the jury over, but you're not. It's making other people feel good makes me feel good. So like, I love organising stuff, whether that be a first year's camp in 2017 for the Richmond Football Club, to barbecues, to now in Authentic Leaders, where we organise and facilitate life-changing experiences for people that would never go through those. There's an element of that where you just like, I just love to win people over by that, and see them go through something that is life-changing. And it doesn't have to be through words. It can be just through actions, or it can be just through placement. And I mean, some of the stuff that we do at Authentic Leaders is in the most remarkable places in the world. Right here in Tasmania, on the 3 Capes, Central Australia at Uluru, up in the high country in Victoria, and we take people to these places and allow them to what we call Riewoldt, where you get back to being a human being. Like, fundamentally, we're probably all bred to reproduce and hunt to feed ourselves. And we like to be in packs as humans sort of are attracted to humans. So there's that sort of aspect to just a bit of rewilding, where you put people back out into an environment where they just don't have their phone or they don't have anything like that, and they just get to be themselves again, get to be a basic human being.
And this is where we've connected through my space maker stuff, in the sense of, disconnecting, making space. And I love your tagline, which is to learn in the world's best classroom, outdoors, experiential learning. Is that right?
Yeah, so teach in the world's best classroom. So
so there's a natural connection in the way that I see the world and the way Authentic Leaders works, which has been really great. But let me dive back into footy, because I'm curious about, well, I'm sure our listeners will be interested about, how your habits and systems helped you become an elite athlete, and then we'll talk about the transition out of footy. Is that all right? So look, I've always been curious about what happens when you're standing in front of 80,000 people and you take a mark and you've got the share and you have to kick it through the sticks. I don't know. And it's not an easy kick, but it's not impossible. And you've got, maybe the Tiger Army screaming on one side and thousands kind of booing you or trying to distract you on the other. I mean, that is a moment of deep focus, where you have to concentrate, you have to be at the top of your game. I'm curious what goes on in your mind in that moment. Like, what are you thinking about, and how do you actually concentrate on what you have to concentrate on?
It's interesting. Certainly, I think there's an element of repetition about it, where it just becomes a habit that you create. But it's hard to train to have, say, 100,000 people on grand final day in an environment. Like, you don't get that until you get to the day. So there's elements about creating habits, and I sort of subscribe to that really in anything. It's like an apprenticeship for a trade or whatever, is that the first 50 games of an AFL player's career, everyone's just happy to get a game because it's new, it's exciting. There's 44 players on a list and there's only 22 selected on the weekend. All you want to do is get a game. Then from 50 to 100 games, you want to solidify yourself in the team where you want to get a game every week. So it's like, oh, now I feel like I belong. I feel like I'm a part of the team. And then after that, whether it's between 100 and 150 games or further on to that, you actually start to think about, oh, what am I going to do for the team? How am I going to play for the team? That's where the players start to come into their own, and mentally they start to perform at their best week in, week out. And that's creating that habit, but also creating this thought process that you shift everything away from outcome, which is, I'm just getting a game. Am I going to get dropped? To all of a sudden, what can I do for someone else? And that thought process allows you to be the best version of yourself, whether that be in football or anything or in life. You actually start to be the best version of yourself because everything else can become automatic. Because after playing footy for 10 years, which would probably take you 10 years to get to 150 games.
And you've got to get recruited in the first place. You've done a lot of footy and you've done a lot of practice, right? Yeah,
so you've got a skill set there. And it's funny how the body kicks in and how the mind kicks in and becomes so automatic. And it's called a state of flow. Yeah. So there's a great documentary called Reggie Miller Winning Time where he just gets into a state of flow. And we speak about that, and we spoke about that a lot post 2016 at the Tigers, where we started to really open up our eyes to the mental side of the game and more about what was called A times B, which is your strengths versus bullshit. So A is your A game, which is the things that you're great at, which we spoke about, like what am I good at? And that might be your Clifton strengths, or it might be certain attributes in your job. For me, I was a really good mark, and I was a really smart footballer too. So I could read the game pretty well. And then the B factors are the weather, the umpires, everything that's out of your control, and how
bounce of the ball,
how quickly those B factors can drag you away from your A game. So in the case of 100,000 people at the G, 100,000 people is just 100,000 B factors. They're all trying to pull you in one direction. And one of the great skills anyone can ever learn to do is capture their own attention when they find themselves slipping. And for us, we just started creating habits. Our attention might not be slipping, but we were so habitual about actually using something to bring us back to our A game and focusing on our strengths that we never slipped. And if we did slip, we'd be able to pull ourselves back to what was our best performance. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So for me, like I used to walk behind people and try and look at the top of their heads because it made me feel like I had a bigger presence. And it's just a simple thing like that. Like I'd walk on my toes, put my chest up, and I'd focus on the back of other people so that I could actually feel like I was not superior, but I felt like I was being the big, tall, best version of myself. And that was what I used to get me back in my A. And by doing that, then it just the pathways in my mind would flick away to, hey, yeah, I'm a great mark. Yeah, I'm great at this. I'm great at this. And then you break it down as, well, what do I need to do that? Well, I got myself in a position where, because I played lots of footy, it was just automatic again as well.
So on the one hand, you've done heaps and heaps of practice. And so when you rock up, you've got the muscle memory and the automated ability to be able to kick when you want to. But you've also done a whole lot of mental habits. And I love what you said, what you're paying attention to, what matters from going from your B game to your A game. And this whole series is about attention, and that what we give attention to will change our life. And the fact that we need to give attention to how do we shape our focus and our attention muscles. So what you've said is very similar. When you're physically on a field, though, I mean, what is actually going through your brain? Are you thinking about, I need to kick this? Are you focusing on your breathing? do you know what's actually going in your head as you're trying to take that walk to kick that goal?
So for goal kicking, and obviously, like, goal kicking was a big part of my job. You go through a whole host of different things, and like, even before I met, so Emma Murray was the lady who spoke to Richmond about and changed Richmond a little bit about our mental side of things, a big bit about how we did it. But subconsciously, I was doing that before I even met Emma. Like, I can remember I used to walk. So I grew up in Bellerive here in Hobart, and I used to walk from Bellerive, King Street where I lived, down to Bellerive Oval to play senior footy when I was 15. So I'd walk down to the Oval. It was only sort of 500 metres away. And I used to play footy the best when I was happy. So I used to love the song Build Me Up Buttercup. And I had a pink iPod, and I'd put that in and I'd play that. And
this is going national,
that's
right?
Fine. I'm happy. And I would really overtly do that to make me feel good as I'd walk down to the ground, just because that was just who I was. It was great fun. So I really struggled for goal kicking in 2000 and at the end of 2014 or 15, I think it was. I can distinctly remember a game against Sydney up at the SCG. And it's amazing how things come back to you at some point in time. And you can see on TV, I'm walking in, and so that I'm happy and just carefree, I'm singing Build Me Up Buttercup as I'm walking in to have a shot for goal. And that was just a distractor to allow my automation of just being a good footballer and a good goal kick to work.
So get your mind out the way.
Get my mind out the way.
And then just let the muscle memory kick in.
So, and then, like, I don't count how many steps I have when I walk in. I don't count how many steps I walk back. I'd literally pick something behind the goals, which I thought was in the middle. I'd line, and now I sound simple, but I learnt on a Texas shooting range that I'm left-eyed.
Yep.
So I'd line that up with my left eye rather than my right eye.
Yep. It's the builder trick where you put your hand up and close one eye and see which one moves most. Yep.
Yeah. So I'd pick a point of grass that lined up as I line up my left eye, and I'd just walk at the grass, and all my focus would be is the grass, ball drop, grass, ball drop.
Right.
And that is literally all it was. So it was a holiday to Texas where I was on a clay shooting range, and they were like, "Oh, I think you got your wrong eye closed." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Go with the other one." And I was like, all of a sudden, I turned into Michael Diamond. I was hitting targets left, right, and centre.
So that makes sense, though, because what you're doing is, so you're not thinking about yourself, and obviously you want to be in a frame where you're actually having fun and you're thinking about the team.
Yeah.
But you're actually just concentrating on a specific thing, and you're honing in your focus through years of practice so that you can push out all the B game stuff, the screaming crowds, all the wind, the distractions, and you just get back into doing the thing you need, which is flow. Yeah. And that's one of the things we teach with deep work and with concentration and focus in the workplace. Yeah. How do you actually remove distractions? How do you create habits and practices so that when you need to achieve concentrated tasks or speak in front of an audience or be at your A game in terms of a conversation with others, how do you just bring in all that practice? So I think that's a fascinating insight.
Yeah, and I think the caveat over all of this is that you could do everything right and shit can still go wrong. Yeah. Like you just you might stumble and or the ball drop just goes wrong. Even like a gust of wind comes through. If you're presenting on a stage or someone, the stage lights falls down, it's like shit just goes wrong sometimes, and that's life.
Yeah, you said to me once that 80% of the time the systems and processes get you there, but then 20% of the time you're playing with an oval ball. Is that right? What you said?
Yeah.
It just bounces bad.
It just bounces bad.
That's a good analogy for life.
St Kilda supporters would know that from 2011. So.
It's true. All right, so let's move on. We've talked about you as an individual. I just want to hear a few things about the systems and culture even that helped you become productive and achieve your best, as a team, essentially. Yeah. I remember you once said when we were coaching, you said that systems provide safety, and then if you get the systems and culture right, the rest looks after itself. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what you said. Yeah,
so there's on-field systems. So I suppose in any workplace you have a system, and footy's actually a great teaching tool for a lot of organisations, just how it all works. It's so fast-paced, the game, but also just the job is high-paced. So you go week to week and you play a game the next week, you play a game next week. So you've got this weekly cycle of win-lose. Yeah. You win, you're on a high, but you can't get too high to come back down for the next game. You lose, you go down, but you got to find something then bring the group back up. Plus, you throw in two teams, so you might have a VFL team that's won really well on the weekend and an AFL team that's lost. And you've got to find the balance there to keep it all rolling ahead. But the thing with the system and the safety in the system, we always spoke about there's safety in the system. So if you do your job, which is your job in the system, you'll be fine. And that provides safety in selection, provides safety to say, oh, I'm not having a great day today. What have I got to come back to? Well, I don't have to be an absolute superstar today. I've just got to do my job. And then on top of that, that's the cream. So, I mean, there's only certain players that can do the cream. They're your guns and your superstar, but they just add that little bit. But there's players out there that their job is to just do their job. And you need a whole host of them, and you need to reward people accordingly for what they do.
So when you talk about the systems then, so my understanding with what you've shared is that you actually have a very, being an elite footy player is a very structured thing. Like you've got some, you know what you're doing day by day, week by week.
Yeah, there's off-field structure. So one of the things I really struggled when I came out of footy was I had my whole life diarised.
Yeah, regimented like a military, right? So and tell me about what you did. What does it look like?
So it would be 8:30 start every day.
Yeah.
Then 8:30 to 9:30 we had this thing called Power Hour where it's all about building relationships. So it's literally sitting around having coffee. It might be grabbing someone to do some extras. And then it's team meeting, training, lunch, weights, massage. This is regimented to the minute. Even the structures of weights, you know what you were going to do. Training drills, you knew what you had to do. But then that flows on to an on-field capacity as well, where say you want to play a certain type of defence. So for us, we wanted to play a really aggressive defence. So for example, on the side of the oval where the opposition have got the ball, on the side of the oval where they have the ball, our players, which are behind the ball, our defenders and possibly our midfielders, would all press up, come up, and then that to try and put pressure on the ball and turn the ball back over. But if you press up the ground, you sort of leave a hole at your own goals. So then the players on the other side of the ground, or the fat side of the ground, we would call that, would have to rotate in behind. So you create a system that way as well. It's a machine basically. That has 18 cogs that work at the same time, and so that works offense and defense. So we would stop the ball. We would stop game review at certain points and know exactly where people should be standing. And this is in a game that's played on a huge oval with an oval ball, things going wrong, an opposition and all this sort of stuff. But we'd still have basic principles, that 80%, that we would want people to be standing in certain positions. So it's funny how that all works. And what would happen when we would lose, one cog wouldn't get it right. And the flow-on effect from one cog not getting it right to the next one, you could see how important every single job is, whether it be the best player in the team or the last player picked, or the player that's doing a role off the ball as far away, might be 100 metres away from the ball, how important that role is.
What it reminds me of, and obviously I don't know anything about footy, but I work and live in the business realm and work with organisational change. And look, what's fascinating is what I'm seeing more and more is there's this culture in workplaces and in business where basically people are given tools like Microsoft Teams and email and diaries and calendars, and it's like good luck. Every individual needs to make up their own system, their own workflow, and it's up to you to be autonomous in your work. And somehow we think that that's going to lead to high performance, and it almost never does. It leads to a bunch of individuals just constantly texting, notifying each other, distracting each other, doing lots of shallow, small work. And so a lot of my work with teams is, okay, we have to actually create shared processes and rhythms and workflows so that actually individual preference doesn't trump team performance. Now, it doesn't mean you have rules and regulations like you would in a football field, but at least let's all have the same way of using Teams or email. Let's have meetings at the same time. Let's structure and plan our week in the same way. And what that always leads to is higher level performance.
Language is another one too. I could talk football language to you right now and you would have absolutely no idea about what I was speaking. But if I said that to any one of the Richmond players that I played with, you'd know exactly what we were talking about. So it's having that lingo.
So the culture that you build as well, right?
Yeah. So you're nearly this little sort of microcosm inside of an AFL environment where we speak a different language. And I think management probably has, and people that manage people probably could look at the way AFL works.
Yeah.
Is they sort of say, it's like everyone has a coach. And then what happens is as players get older, they start to manage younger players. And it's not through any official capacity or anything like that. It's actually through just time together. And a lot of people, like you're saying, get thrown into a manager's role and be like, all right, you've got a team of 10 now. But they may have only been working in the business for 12 months or if they're lucky.
Yeah.
Whereas there's learned experience where you actually acquire knowledge.
It's an apprenticeship.
You acquire
system, isn't it?
Acquire knowledge, and then you start to impart knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
And then a lot of players end up being coaches, so they sort of continue to impart knowledge.
That's fascinating. So I suppose one of the things I've taken away, though, is that, I might look at you do these specky marks, you look like you're this amazing individual, and of course, you've got your own talents and skills. But what we don't see necessarily is that actually you're part of a very structured system which has got a bunch of habits and processes and practices around it. And it's that routine, the systems that provide the safety that allow you to look like an individual performing well. Would that be fair to say?
That's right. So I will give you one example of one where it captures your attention, but it's also a reset. So after a goal, so whether that be an opposition goal or our goal, you would see Richmond forwards and Richmond backs and Richmond midfield all come together and stand in a circle. And we called that the circle of trust. It was born from a catch cry we had called Nudgin, which was brotherhood in First Nations language. And all First Nations meetings happen in a circle so that everyone stands eye to eye and has the same, or sits eye to eye and has the same level of belonging at that meeting. So we would, after a goal, we would all stand in a circle and we might be talking about nothing. Someone might be telling a joke, but it was just about coming together as a circle. But that was an actual reset for us. It gave everyone a sense of safety as well.
Yeah, okay.
Like it's not standing in a circle like as you all stand around with your arms down to your legs and stuff like that. We put our arms around each other to make sure there's that element of physical touch, which is that bit of that Riewoldt about being in a group, in a bit of a pack.
Yeah.
The circle represented us, everyone having the same voice and having the chance to speak or be heard. And then there's just that reset of mindset, whether it be the high of a goal or a low of an opposition goal.
That's great. And look, this might bring me to my next point because I want to talk about your transition out of footy.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've thought about, and having read your book as well, I mean, look to the experience of being in an elite football team, and especially, the highs and lows of being near the bottom and then heading near the top. But I mean, you have this incredible camaraderie. You put your bodies on the line. It's all in, right? Footy is all in, from the physicality to just your time, your families. And that must create such a strong unity. And then you retire and you enter ordinary life where it must be very hard to replace that. I used to work with Vietnam vets and do physiotherapy, and I used to take a bunch of vets who are in their 50s, and we used to exercise, do mindfulness meditation, do hydrotherapy, and they just couldn't replace what they had back then with ordinary life. And that was a sticking point, and it was a problem, as well as there were some benefits with that. So I suppose my question is, I'm fascinated about the transition of how you go from being in that environment to normal life.
Yeah. I think probably I've filled my life with being busy.
Yep.
But there will be a dawning time, I think, where all of a sudden I go, like footy's not real, not a real job for me anymore. Like I'll still work in footy for Fox and work for Tassie, but I won't play. You probably yearn a little bit for that, doing stuff with your mates.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be physical exercise, but for me, that's an important one. So, like I've come home to Tassie for the last couple of months, and like I go out and bike ride with my mates because it's quite healthy for me. It's healthy to get out and go and do something active, but the coffee at the end of a 60, 100K bike ride, like that's the gold. Like that's the goal where you sit down and you've just done something together and you sit there and talk absolute garbage for 20 minutes over a coffee. Like that's stuff that reminds me of footy, and it's really important to me.
Yeah. So you're doing something that's hard and challenging, and then there's relationship and connection as a result. So there's mimicking similarities.
Yeah. So and so that's the thing. It's just maintaining something like that in your life. But you also know, and like people ask me, why did you retire? Like, you could have played for another year and all this sort of stuff. I just started loving other stuff more than footy. Like, I love footy, absolutely love footy, hence why I probably still work in that capacity. I just love other stuff more. Like, I've got 3 kids. It's quite a selfish job, football. You can't go and do stuff that you might have normally done. Like, you can't travel the world in the middle of the year and stuff, which, I mean, people are very lucky to do that, but you can't do that. You've got to look after your body. You've got to look after your diet. Your partner or wife might have to look after the kids by themselves on a weekend where you got to travel.
Yeah, or COVID where you have to move the whole family.
Yeah,
right?
COVID was a bit of a curveball for everyone.
Right. Bad memories. I shouldn't have brought that up.
That's all right.
Hey, so let's move to the last bit, really, which is, I'm fascinated about focus and attention and habits and systems in the workplace, obviously beyond footy, because this podcast is about helping people think about how can they build habits and practices to recapture their focus and reduce some of the distraction that stops them living the life they want to live.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked about, if that's all right, is Richmond ran on a very text message-based system because everything had to be very short, immediate, and week by week. I think you said if you focus more than the week ahead, you can get lost and distracted, right? Yep. But business doesn't quite work like that. You need to have some longer-term thinking, some medium-term thinking, and business in the sense of, the jobs you're in don't have a regimented turn up at this time and do this day by day. So I'm curious about what are some of the habits or practices that you're putting in place that are working for you to help you, I suppose, perform and focus in the stuff that you're doing, whether it be ALG or Fox footy or, Tas footy or whatever you're doing?
So I think it's about understanding what you've got or the skill set that you've developed over that period of time. So 17 years to develop skill sets, a reasonable amount of time. Granted, it has changed a bit, but if you can transfer systems across, like that's a good way to do it. So for me, it was learning how to run my diary, for example. Now I have multiple email addresses. It's actually learning how to run them, color code, just little things like that kept me in the same sort of flow as what I was when everything was run by someone else.
So as in, so from going from a completely open, unstructured workflow to how do I reproduce some of the best of what got me moving? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it is. It is. So I think there's an element of, there will always be a big element of just getting up and going, which like can be really difficult. And I'll probably haven't focused on that as much lately. Like I've come away to, I've been down in Tassie now for a couple of months, that actually allow yourself to maybe shift away from that from a little bit, just for a period of time, to give yourself a bit of downtime.
And you're good at resting, aren't you? That's one thing I've noticed about you. You like having fun, you like living life.
Yeah.
So it's not all about work for you.
Nah, it's not all about work.
And family's important. And so you've got 100%. Those rhythms and patterns, Yeah.
So then there's a point in time where, and I'm probably transitioning through that at the moment, where I've got to pick back up again and go, right, back into let's call it in-season mode or work mode.
In-season, all right. Hopefully without the injuries.
Yeah, so that's important.
Do you have any specific habits, like one or two things that you think, if I'm going to get back in season in a non-footy realm, are there any things that you think help you?
Yeah, weekly planning is the one that you've taught me, which I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I'll give you $10 for saying that.
Yeah,
thanks, Jack.
No stress. But I think, so that weekly planning is just big rocks, little rocks. It's just trying to figure out what are the easy jobs you can knock off pretty quickly. The big rocks stay there and you sort of chip away at them a little bit.
Yep. So they're the kind of the goalpost for the week, really. The 5 tasks that matter across whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And sometimes they go over a 2-week period. They might go over a month period, but it's just actually sort of putting them on paper, because sometimes I reckon you get something coming on your inbox or something coming in your life and you're like, I do not want to look at that. I'm just going to shun that away.
Is that why you never get back to me?
But But actually that element of sort of naming it to taming it, where you just write it down, and then there's something about just ticking something off a list, and you're like, right, okay, I've done that.
So breaking stuff down, ticking it off, and just making sure you're progressing the longer term things. Yeah. Hey, look, last question about life after footy, and then we'll do some rapid fire questions if that's all right. Life is for living. That's one of your mottos, right? Yeah. Well, that is the motto I read in your book. It was a great read, by the way. Yeah. But what are you passionate about now in this next season? What do you love more than footy right now? Outside of family, even.
I think Tasmania is a really big, important one for me. And it's funny how all my businesses sort of or interests have sort of transitioned back to Tassie. We work here for Authentic. I do some stuff for the footy club down here. Even stuff that I've learned as I've been travelling around the state in the last couple of weeks. There's little stories that I want to tell on Fox that are Tassie based. So it's that sense of home, which is grounding for us as a family as well. And other than that, it's just I'm just probably more excited about what the next period holds for me a little bit, but for more of us as a family. Like with young kids, they grow up pretty bloody fast. So like big milestones like kids learning to ride a bike for the first time, or like Tommy, our youngest, is close to walking and all that sort of stuff. Whereas they're the big milestones again now. Then kids going to school and all that sort of jazz. So you get excited about everything that happens there, and that's a big part of your life.
Now, they're important, and what I love about what I know about your life is you really know what you value, and you shape your time and your energy around people, around family, and I think that's kept you well grounded. Which is great.
Yeah, that's just reminded me of, you asked me before we were recording about what's been the most fun thing, and I said teaching Poppy how to ride a bike, but we built a tree fort the other day out the back of our place in Orford out of an old canopy sort of thing that was it's like a bigger version of a bird aviary.
Okay.
For
humans.
For humans. And we dismembered it, turned it into a tree fort.
The bird box, not the human,
not
right?
the human.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's like, and Carly and I have been doing that at 7 o'clock at night when the kids have been in bed. We're right, let's get out and quickly just put a few things. We've got a couple of climbing things. We've got a swing on the tree. Like that sort of stuff, has been great fun. Yeah, great fun. Yeah.
And that's the stuff that you love.
Yeah, and you're not building it for yourself or anything as much as I get on there and have a play, but you're building it for them to wake up the next day and go, oh, awesome, there's a new bit to the treehouse.
I love it, Jack. That's awesome. Hey, look, we finish every episode, because this is part of a series where we're teaching people how to focus. We're giving theory, but we're giving people a practical activity. Yeah. So at the end of it, the first week we got people to go outside for 5 minutes and just focus and think about what they're seeing and what they're hearing. The second week we got people to pick up a guitar or some type of high-quality leisure activity that they've forgotten to do and put down their tech tools and focus.
I played the flute as a kid.
Oh, there you are. I won't make you do that, although you could do a solo. But I'm going to spring this on you, and I know I haven't given you any thought about this, but if you were to get our listeners to do one simple, small, practical challenge that can help improve their life, their focus, their attention, or, to do something that matters, can you think of anything you'd encourage people to do?
Yeah, look, one thing we do as a part of our Authentic Leaders immersions is we do this walk from the top of Mount Fortescue down into Fortescue Bay. It's about an hour. And you send people off every 200 metres, a couple of minutes between each other, and you walk in silence. It's called forest bathing. And it's funny how you do stuff, if you walk in silence, how the most important things in your life or the life-changing things bubble to the top. So it's sort of like as you're walking down the hill, it's filtering your mind, and you let your mind wander, but you'll come around to the things that need to be addressed or want to be addressed. So I like just going for a walk in silence, which is not hard to do, but it is difficult because you want to chuck your AirPods in, or you want to go for a walk with a friend, or you want to go for a walk with a dog, or whatever. There's so many of these little distractions where you think, I can knock 2 jobs off at the same time. Whereas sometimes it's just going for a walk is what you need, and whether that be an hour or whether that be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it's just actually finding that time for yourself.
And being present and just being there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it. Okay, well, I want you to do some forest bathing. So that does not mean taking your clothes off in the forest. Do not put that down to my podcast. But it does mean put your phone away and actually just go for a walk. Look, it can be 10 minutes if you want to be soft like us, or if you want to be an elite athlete like Jack, go for an hour. Yeah. But the point is, be silent, be present, and remember those action triggers we've talked about. Think about when and where you're going to do it this week. You might even put it in your calendar and actually just do some forest bathing and think about what you need to give attention to. That's an awesome practice. So we're going to finish with quick. Can I just ask you 7 super fast, quick questions?
No stress.
And we'll finish, all right?
Yep.
So if you had 2 hours of guilt-free space, how would you use that time?
I'd ride 60 Ks. Yep.
Nice. What's the best thing about being a dad?
That's a great question. Coming home after you've been away for a bit. Nice. I reckon even if it's just a quick trip to town and your kids come run up to you. Yep.
Cool. If you could attribute success to one habit or mindset, what would that be?
Not looking at the outcome.
Sweet. What's one lesson that we can learn about life from footy?
The power of relationships.
What's the downside to fame and success that you've experienced?
I was going to say selfies, but
can I take one with you?
Yeah. Look, I think that there's a lot of people speak for you at some point in time. Like, I know this is a bit of a long-winded answer, but anyone that's got some sort of notoriety, or whether that be football or whatever, is sometimes seen as a leader, or seen as supposed to be a role model. Because a lot of times people are they're pretty normal. Yeah.
Actually, can I say on that point, I remember reading your book and you're saying that, you really struggled, that you'd be reading stuff about yourself and people would be saying what was going through your mind and what your motivations were. Yeah. And it was just unfair and hard.
All wrong. Yeah, that's
and wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. 2 more. What's one of the things you're most thankful for about life you've had?
Having a partner through the whole journey of footy, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And if you could change one thing about the world today, what would you love to change?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's obviously a bunch of shit that's happening in the world at the moment that you'd like to fix straight away. But what's a
maybe something you could change?
I reckon just giving every kid a chance. That's probably one thing I'd want to do. Yeah. So I just think that there's people that just, due to their circumstances, or like it seems a bit unfair that wherever you're born, sometimes the place you're born in puts you miles behind the 8 ball, even before it's all begun. I find that really difficult. And that happens, obviously, overseas. We see it quite brutally on TV, but it also happens right here in Tassie. It happens in Australia, where sometimes you put in an environment or you come into an environment where you might not be given your best chance. Yeah. I struggle with that a little bit, I reckon.
Love it. Great insight. Look, Jack, it has been an amazing pleasure. I've been so grateful for the times we've had and what I've learned from you, and you are an inspiration to me as well. Thanks so much for sharing about productivity and focus and footy and riding bikes and building crazy sports. Look, thanks so much. Is there anything else you'd like to finish with?
No, I just noticed that my book's a hardcover and yours is a softcover. That means you've sold lots of copies to get to softcover. Is that right?
Actually, I have a hardcover that no one bought, but I brought the softcover along with me. But no, it's a ripper book. I really enjoyed it. And it's kind of weird reading about someone I'm friends with. And especially since I don't know anything about footy.
Yeah.
So firstly, I learned about footy.
Yeah.
And I was also, I loved your honesty and I loved what I learned about you. So
that's why it's good having someone do the whole journey with you as well, because they can recount everything as well. Carly was a massive help with the book. So, and when I say massive, she did the most of it, to be honest.
You're not meant to say that, are you?
That's okay. Yeah, it's our journey. It should have both our names in it.
Oh, that sounds good. Oh, anyway, look, good luck in all that you do. Yeah. And until next time, make space.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
The Space Makers with Daniel C. and Matt Bain.
A shout out to our sponsor, Bulk Nutrients. the superheroes of the supplement world, helping us make space for gains, not pains. And yes, that's what happens when I rely on ChatGPT to write my pithy one-liners. You can enjoy a 5% discount on protein powders and health supplements at bulknutrients.com.au. Just enter the coupon code SPACEMAKERS for a discount on orders over $45.
If you enjoyed this podcast, we would love you to follow us and leave a positive review, and help others make space by sharing this episode with a friend, or subscribe to our blog post at spacemakers.au. Until next time, make space.